Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Samsaradava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Gana Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasenam Mahaprabhu Gita Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanadu Shri Vigrahara Shringaratanama Jukta Sabhaktam Sa Niyunjatopi Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptan Harivakta Shanga Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptan Kridvaiva Trupte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Shiradikama Dhavayara Parang Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shiradikama Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Ne kunjayo no ratikeli siddhai Jajali bheri yuktir apekshaneya Nikunjayo no ratikeli siddhai Jajali bheri Tatrati daksha ativalavasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Sakshadharitvena Shamasta Shashre Ruktastatava Vyataiva Sadhave Sakyadari Kintu pravarja priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanara Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasadam Sadam Yasya Prasadam Dayam Stubham Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachattari Shatarine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Shunyavadi Pachattari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Nama, Krishna Jadavaye Nama, Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama, Gopal Govindaram Srimadhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, Krishna Krishna, Shri Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe. Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Baladeva Jayo Subhadrama Jayo Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram Jayo Sitaram Sitaram Jayo Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Jai Vishnu Paraparam Saprabhajakacha Stotara Sarasishya Maharaj Divine Grace Abhacharvina Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Pratishta Viviti Samstapaka Char Vaishnav Saramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gaurya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadguru Swami Prabhu Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Anant Koti Vaishnavrind Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन श्रीमन गौरंग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावरण अवतार की जय गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जग की जय जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय बृहद बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गुप्ता राधा कुंज समकुंज गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय टेलोशिप श्री राधा नील माधव की जय श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्रधाम की जय परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु स्मृत देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना कर श्रृंगरे भगवान की जय जगंगा माय जमुना माय की जय तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय श्री मथुरा रानी की जय समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय निताय गौर हरि परमानंद हरि all glory to the assembly bodies all glory to the assembly bodies all glory to the assembly bodies Shri Shri Guru Shri Gaura Jai
Namaste Namaste Narasimhaya Prahlad Lad Daine Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha Shiladankarnakhalaye Ito narsimho parito narsimho Yato yato yami tato narsimho Pahe narsimho hridaye narsimho Narasimhamadim sharanam prapade Tava kara kamalavare naka Adbhuta Shringam Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव 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 जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल श्री विघ्न विनाशक नरसिंह देव भगवान की जय भक्त प्रहलाद महाराज की जय
Krishna preyasi namo namaha. Namo namaha Tulasi Krishna preyasi Namo namaha. Radha Krishna seva pabo ei abhilashi. Radha Krishna seva pabo ei abhilashi. ये तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंचा पूरा न हो. कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी. मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास. नयने हरिबो सदा जुगल रूपरासी. এই নিবেদন ধারো সাখীর অনুগাতা করো. सेवा अधिकारा दिए करो निज दासी. दीना कृष्णा दासे गोए ये न मोरा होए. श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदाई न भासी. श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदाई न भासी. यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे. यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहति अधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहति अधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय।
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Vajpayai Vishwasatya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Vajpayai Vishwasatya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. Mighty Knight of Tulasi, Shirahar Krishna. Fulfilled, bestowing myself on him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire that you also give me the residence of the Lord Krishna. Thus within my vision always was all the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a thorough account of the world. Swim in love with Shri Radha and Govind. Jai Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhyastakam Ki Jai. Cheto Datpanam Vajanam Tavamada Vandini Vapanam Shri Akali Vachandika Vitaranam Vidavadu Jeevanam Ananda Purivardhanam Tadipadam Purnamita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita Niyamita Smaranena Kala Etadrishi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamati Durdhaivam Idrishamya Janina Nuraga Trinarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadina Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagarishakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahaitu Kitwai Ainandatanu Jakinkaram Patitama Vishame Bhavambudo Kripaya Tavapar Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudharaya Vadanam Gadagadharudaya Gira Pulakari Chitam Bapukada Tavanam Agrahane Bhavishati Juga Itam Nimishena Chakyusha Prabhusa Itam Shunya Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Verainame Asli Shabapadaраtam Pinashtama Adarshanan Marmahatam Karotuva Jatadathava Vidadatulam Patu Matpranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhyastakam Ki Jai Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Gaur Tvishi Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus we have hundreds, millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name with the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of the devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and it sure remains so. Even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kristakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1, to blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2, to consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the known Lord Vishnu. 3, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4, to blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5, to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6, to give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7, to commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8, to consider the chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9, to instruct the fellows person about the glories of the holy name. And 10, do not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even for understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas devoted to the Lord. They are just like desired trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Bancha kalpatarubhascha vasindhubhaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo. Jayanta Kuja Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namo Vishwaya. Jai Shri Guru. Shri Guru Pranam Ki Jai. Om Jnana Tirandasya Dhananjana Salakaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamidam Dadi Swaparam Vidyam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudhapalakamadam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamcha Shri Rupam Savajatam Savaganaramanatabhintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devi Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunavadi Vasatyari Satarini Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namini Shiva Shavanavi Devi Daitayati Bhakti Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhurjo Jala Premadhya Shirupa Nuga Shivora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namaste Namaste
Vani Shivutaye Dinatarine Rupanuka Virudapa Abhisidanta Dinatarine Namo Vishwaya Nitravambara Sambodhe Padam Bhajayate Namaha Namo Satyanandanamine Goda Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuka Vrayate Goda Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Suratur Pangur Mama Manda Matir Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bujo Radha Madana Mohano Vyad Vindaranya Kalpadramadaha Shrimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shrimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Bihi Sevyamanam Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanir Gobir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susurabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kranantam Aravinda Dalaya Taksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visesa Sobam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvana Malya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Tribanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Muni Pungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichantya Tatve Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim Koshchakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprupya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Patibhavitabis Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hidayesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundarim Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amenatistan Nana Vatara Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti Yotiswasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Vishaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Pratifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Sute Sutesu Te Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitascha Yena Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shristi Stati Palaya Sakta Virakti Reva Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichanurupam Abhyasya Chachestate Sa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Vishesha Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasambhutam Apitatas Sampaitikaryat Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departureva Hita Santalam Abhyupetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Sadam Dharma Etadrigeva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Adhara Shaktim Avalambya Param Smamurtim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivante Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata Vishnur Mahansahi Yasya Kalavishesho Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakaleshu Nijesha Teja Swiyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitatvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanukarta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dvande Pranama Samaye Saganadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alavasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganamambu Marudisascha Kalastatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschakshuresa Savita Sakalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Srutayastapamse Brahma Dikita Patagava Dayasta Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdhati Kintu Chapakti Bhajam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaurava Sevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Druma Bhumischintamani Ganama Itoyam Amritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apibam Sipriyasaki Chidanandam Jyoti Param Apitada Swatyam Apicha Sayatra Siradi Bhishravadi Surabhi Yascha Sumahan Nimestar Dakyuva Rajati Nahiya Trapi Samaye Bhaje Svita Dvipam Tamaham Iya Golokamityam Vidantaste Santakshati Viralachara Katipaye Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karana Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Shri Guru Vastika Prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava, and the qualities, names, and The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. For our respectful based on the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I have to offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi Haribol. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, and we're going to do verse 36 again. Savachakataya Bhagavan Brahma Rupa Drik Nama Rupa Kriya Date Sakarma Karmaka Prada Sa He Vacha by his forms and activities. Vachakataya by his transcendental qualities, and entourage, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Brahma, absolute, Rupadrik, by accepting visible forms, Nama, name, Rupa, form, Kriya, pastime, Date, accepts, Sakarma, engaged in work, Akarmaka, without being affected, Para, transcendence. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He, the personality of Godhead, manifests himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of his transcendental name, quality, pastimes, entourage, and transcendental variegatedness. Although he is unaffected by all such activities, he appears to be so engaged. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Whenever there is a need of material creation, the transcendental personality of Godhead accepts forms in the material world for creation, maintenance, and destruction. One should be intelligent enough to know his activities in truth and not be biased to conclude that he descends to the material world by accepting a form created by material nature. Any form accepted from the material nature has its affection for everything done in the material world. A conditioned soul who accepts a material form for undergoing a certain term of material activities is subjected to the laws of matter. But here, in this verse, it is clearly stated that although the forms and activities of the Lord appear to be the same as those of a conditioned soul, they are supernatural and impossible for the conditioned soul. He, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always unaffected by such activities. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.14, the Lord says, Namam karmani limpanti, name karma phale spriha, itimam yo bijananti, karma bir nasapadyate. The Lord is never affected by the activities which he apparently performs by his different incarnations and personalities, nor does he have any desire to achieve success by fruitive activities. The Lord is full by his different potencies of wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, and thus he has no reason for physical exertion like the conditioned souls. Therefore, an intelligent person who can distinguish between the transcendental activities of the Lord and the activities of the conditioned souls is also not bound by the reactions of activities. The Lord, as Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, conducts the 3 modes of material nature. From Vishnu is born Brahma, and from Brahma is born Shiva, and sometimes Brahma is a separated part of Vishnu, and sometimes Brahma is Vishnu himself. Thus, Brahma creates the different species of life all over the universe, which means that the Lord creates the whole manifestation either by himself or through the agency of his authorized deputies. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. He, the personality of Godhead, manifests himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of his transcendental name, quality, pastimes, entourage, and transcendental variegatedness. Although he is unaffected by all such activities, he appears to be so engaged. So this is the conundrum. Look that word up, conundrum. Conundrum means it's a puzzle, it's confusing, it's something that's hard to decipher. What's it say?
A confusing and difficult problem or question.
Yes. So this is why very few people understand Krishna, because it's the syndrome of identifying Krishna by projecting one's own limitations on him. So this is the problem human beings have. A human being has a duality. What is a duality? There's a difference between his body and his soul. Krishna doesn't have that duality. And because of that duality that human beings have, it's almost impossible for them to understand Krishna. When I say almost impossible, it is impossible unless they meet a bona fide devotee of the Lord who can explain things as they are. And that is why we're reading Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna explains himself in the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna's pure devotees explain Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, it's impossible to understand Krishna because of our entanglement in the material world, birth after birth. This is not our first birth. We have gone through 8,400,000 species of life to come to a civilized form or human form with highly developed senses and mind and intelligence, which are only for understanding Krishna. They're not for making millions of dollars through artificial intelligence or IT or engineering or business or whatever. We are endowed with these highly effective and highly developed senses, mind, and intelligence to understand our relationship with Krishna. But it's difficult because we have this fundamental duality. And the duality is compounded many, many times over by false identifications and attachments. So the false identifications, I am white, I am black, I am green, I'm yellow, I am American, I am Latino, I am Telangana, I am Andhra, I am this, I am that. All those false identifications and attachments that go along with them. So the problem is compounded with many, many different layers of falsities. Therefore, it's almost impossible to get over these false identifications. And it comes even into Krishna consciousness. And it comes into the religions also. Like, for example, in India, you have the Christians. But did you know that even among the Christians in India, they practice the caste system? Did you know that? Well, they speak against the caste system, but the influence of it is so powerful that it also enters into Christianity. So this is not really followed. Like in the same thing, in Russia, in the Soviet Union, they tried to eliminate the castes. Did they eliminate the castes? No. It morphed into what's called the intelligentsia, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras. Even though it was a communist country where they openly speak against caste differentiations, but still the caste existed there. It's called the nomenklatura in Russian language. In other words, you had the rulers of the country, which were members of the Soviet party. Then you had the intellectuals in the colleges and so forth. You had the Vaishyas, who were managing the factories. You can't have a factory without managers. And then you had the workers. Now, in pure communism, everyone should be a worker. But that didn't happen in the Soviet Union. Although they spoke about it, it's part of their philosophy, they never really attained that state. And they were not supposed to have rulers. The rulers were only supposed to be temporary, and then eventually the people would own everything. That never happened. So there has never been a pure communistic state. Or if there has been, it only lasted a short period of time, and it morphed or changed into capitalism or socialism. Socialism is not communism. Communism means the commune, the people, own everything, right? Socialism means the government and the rulers own everything, and the government owns everything. And capitalism means the individual is the owner, and monarchy is the kings and the nobles are the owners, right? And anarchy is nobody is the owner. All those are false concepts of proprietorship. The only real concept of proprietorship is that Krishna is the owner of everything. Bhuktaram yagitabasam sarvaloka mahesram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam santam richati. One can only attain peace by understanding three things. Krishna is the beneficiary of all sacrifices. Krishna is the supreme owner of everything, and Krishna is your best friend because he's present in your heart as Paramatma. If he's not present in your body, you would die immediately. Right? At least the body would die, because we are not controlling the body. These are things we have to realize. We don't control the body. We don't control the blinking, the eyes. We don't control the digestion. We don't control the heartbeat. We don't control blood circulation. We don't control how to make blood. All these things are beyond our control, and we depend on them. We depend on the sun. We don't control the sun. You know, if the sun blows up, and then the whole universe would collapse. So we see we have all these false concepts in our mind, and many levels of them, that it's impossible for us on our own to understand Krishna. However, with the help of bona fide gurus, Diksha gurus, and following the example of the parampara, previous acharyas, we can understand, and not only understand, we can become liberated from the cycle of birth and death. That's what I wanted to go over, because this is explained in this purport, where it says, Namam karmani limpanti, name karma phalespriha, iti mam yo bijananti, karma bir nasabadyate. So this is a very important verse. It's 4th chapter, 14th verse of Bhagavad Gita. We went over this somewhat yesterday, but I want to go over it again much more carefully, because there are many things in this purport to this verse and in the verse itself that are extremely important if we're interested in freeing ourselves from the cycle of birth and death. If we're not interested in that, then you can walk out of the class right now, because it'll be a waste of time for you. But if you want to be free from the cycle of birth and death, listen very, very, very carefully. This verse says, it's spoken by Krishna himself. He says, there is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. In other words, in the process of karma. So, what does this mean exactly? Well, This verse is related to the 4th chapter, 9th verse. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyakvadeham punarjanma naitimameti sarjana. What does that verse say? It says that one who understands the mysterious transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities does not, after leaving the body, take birth again, but comes back to me. Okay? So, these two verses are very, very related. In other words, knowledge of Krishna, if we develop this knowledge of Krishna, and where do we get it? We get it from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Those two books are only concerned about Krishna. You don't get it clearly by reading the 4 original Vedas, Rig Veda and the Sama Veda and Yajur Veda and the Atharva Veda. You won't get it there. You won't get it so clearly by reading the Puranas. You won't get it clearly by reading the Mahabharata. You won't get it clearly by reading Vedanta Sutra. And you won't get it clearly by reading the philosophical parts of the original 4 Vedas called the Upanishads. You'll get something, but you won't get the whole picture clear. You will only get the clear picture by reading, and not only reading. Reading is not good enough. You have to hear it spoken by genuine devotees, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That's why so many Hindus are confused. They're confused about their own religion, right? They don't really understand it properly because the Brahmanas don't understand it properly. Most Brahmanas. There are some that have good understanding, but most of them don't. They've just become businessmen, performing pujas for hire. And because of that, Hinduism is in a gigantic downward spiral. And if you want to know more about that, I've written a book called The Flaws of Modern Hinduism. You can see that book on our webpage of the Vedic Cultural Center. Anyway, this verse 414 is extremely important for understanding the dilemma that people have in understanding Krishna. So it says in the purport, as there are constitutional laws in the material world stating that the king can do no wrong, or that the king is not subject to the state laws, similarly, the Lord, meaning Lord Krishna, although he is the creator of this material world, is not affected by the activities of the material world. Are you affected by the activities of the material world? Am I affected by the activities of the material world? Yes. There are hurricanes, there's war, there's virus, there's economic downturn, there is competition, there is so many things, and we're all affected by it, right? Relationships are affected by different relationships. But Krishna is not affected by any of that, even though he appears in the material world once in a day of Brahma. And we talked about that yesterday, that he appears in his original form as Shan Sundar once in a day of Brahma. Now, the day of Brahma lasts 1,000 times 4,300,000,000 years. So you're talking about 4,300,000,000,000 years once in that period, and it happens in the 28th cycle of the 7th Manu. Okay, so his appearance in his original form is very rare, and it happened 5,000 years ago, so we're very fortunate because we're close to when Krishna appeared, the one time in the day of Brahma. Okay, so it says, he creates and remains aloof from the creation, whereas the living entities are entangled in the fruitive results of material activities because of their propensity for lording it over material resources. So our dilemma is the following. The root of all sin is deliberate disobedience of the laws of nature by disregarding the proprietorship of the Lord. There it is. The root of sin is deliberate disobedience to the laws of nature by disregarding the proprietorship of the Lord. That means everything, including our body, our mind, our intelligence, everything belongs to Krishna. It doesn't belong to Bezos or Gates or Ellison or Page or any of those guys. It belongs to Krishna. It doesn't belong to the United States, it doesn't belong to Russia, it doesn't belong to Ukraine. It belongs to Krishna. And by deliberate disobedience of the laws of nature, what are the laws of nature? First and foremost law is anyone in the material world should surrender to Krishna. How do we know that? Well, Krishna says in the 18th chapter, 66th verse, that tells Arjuna that you must surrender unto me, and then I will free you from all the miseries of life, from all karma, etc. Right? And he says, Sarvadharmam parityaja mam ekam saranam vraja ham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshisyami ma shuchaha. That's actually the first law of material nature. And then the second law is that if you don't surrender to Krishna, then you become subject to birth, old age, disease, and death. And there's no escaping from that. Everyone is going to be, even Jesus Christ died and was resurrected, right? But he had to die first. So here we see a fundamental disregard and misunderstanding of the laws of nature and of God. And this is what keeps people suffering in the material world, birth after birth. And very few people understand this. Very few people understand the most basic point of Krishna consciousness. I am not this body. They all identify with the body. And the body has different names. Like someone can say, well, when I was born, I was attached to my body and my family. Then I got older and I realized that I'm not a girl, I'm actually a boy. And then later on, I realized that I'm not a boy. I'm neutral gender. Sometimes I can act as a boy, sometimes I can act as a girl. And then so forth. It just goes on and on. Now, how many pronouns are there in the workplace? Huh? How many pronouns are there? How many genders are there now? Anybody want to take a guess? According to the modern concept, first of all, how many pronouns are there?
He, she, him.
Huh?
You probably went through the training.
Well, how many pronouns did they say in the training? Huh? Only 3? You just named 4 or 5. Huh? What? That's all? No, there's a lot more. How many genders are there now? How many? 4? No. There are many genders now. Huh? 65, right. You see why I'm saying it's not just I am this body. Now you have so many subcategories that it's bewildering to people. And by the way, if you make a mistake on a pronoun, you can lose your job. Is that right? Yeah, you can lose your job now. If you say, oh well, that so-called he, who's actually a she, who's probably an it, told me this that I should go and jump in a lake. If you said something like that, you would get fired right away.
Your number is outdated. It's 72 now.
72 genders, right? And increasing, and increasing. Okay, so we see how confusing it is. We can't even identify who we are anymore. You know, so therefore, it says the living entities are entangled in the fruitive results of material activities because of their propensity for lording it over material resources. The proprietor of an establishment is not responsible for the right and wrong activities of the workers, but the workers are themselves responsible. The living entities are engaged in their respective activities of sense gratification, and these activities are not ordained by the Lord. So in other words, he's getting to the point here that we are responsible for suffering, not God. He is simply facilitating us by giving us this highly advanced body with highly developed senses. And in Bhagavad Gita, he's saying, surrender unto me. That's the first law of material nature. And we don't want to do that. We want to be a competitor of God by not surrendering unto him and by trying to control some part of the material nature. Right? So that's called, as it says here, because of our propensity for lording it over material resources. Right? So that's what people do. They start a business and they try to make a profit, and when the business is going good, they buy other businesses, or they put other people out of business, and they want to be a dominator. And the more they dominate, the more they want to enjoy what they dominate. You know, the spoils of their success, and they become entangled in lawsuits. They become entangled in all kinds of controversies and fighting, and sometimes they murder people. It's just one layer upon another layer of illusory activities and conceptions. So why does Prabhupada give this example? He says, the proprietor of an establishment is not responsible for the right and wrong activities of the workers, but the workers are themselves responsible. Because if people are suffering today, it's not the fault of God. It's because people have made wrong decisions. Now, why can a dog not make wrong decisions, but a person can? Because the dog, due to its body, is restricted. It does not have free will. It is always dictated by the Paramatma, how it will act. But a human being is endowed with limited free will. And we see that. Like in this morning, some people chose to wake up early and come to the temple. And many other people chose not to, right? So you have that choice. You know, even if you're an initiated devotee, you can choose, I'm not going to go to the temple today. You know, I'm just going to stay home and sleep in, sleep in my own stool, basically. Most materialistic people, when they wake up, they don't even brush their teeth. But during the night when you sleep, there's some yellow type of slime that develops on the tongue. Those are impurities that the body is trying to get rid of. But most people, instead of brushing their teeth and rinsing their mouths and using a tongue scraper to scrape the tongue, they'll just drink a cup of coffee and re-swallow all those impurities. And then you want to find out why people are getting so sick. How come the health in the United States is not so good of the people? It's because of their habits, bad habits. Waking up late, going to sleep late, swallowing back all that yellow scum on the tongue. I mean, it's horrible. right? They don't even take a bath every day. So we see, whereas a devotee must take minimum 2 baths a day, and Brahmins who are doing deity worship, minimum 3 times a day they should bathe. So we see hygiene is bad, diet is bad, and no wonder that the thoughts are bad and the desires are bad. So therefore it says, these activities of illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, intoxication, developing envy, hatred, lust, greed, anger, all these things are not the fault of God. It's the fault of the individual who has a choice at every point in life, either to follow God's instructions or to ignore them, or to be ignorant and not even try and understand them. Right? So, therefore, for advancement of sense gratification, the living entities are engaged in the work of this world, and they aspire to heavenly happiness after death. The Lord, being full in himself, has no attraction for so-called heavenly happiness. So people want to go to heaven. Like the Muslims, they want to go to Jannat. That's their word for heaven. Because there, they will get 70 virgins to have sex with. That's what they're promised, right? Now, is it true? Oh, who knows? The ones that strap bombs in their body and blow up people, they go to hell, although they've been promised to go to Jannat, right? But people, whether they're Hindu or Muslim, are promised heavenly pleasures if they do sacrifices. So for the Muslims, it's blowing themselves up, or it's going to the 5 prayers a day and following all the dietary laws and so many other things that they have, which are not bad. And for the Hindu, it's doing Satyanarayana Puja once a month on the full moon day, or going to Vaishno Devi and climbing into that little hole cave. And there was one Baba, they call it, he would roll from Delhi to Vaishno Devi. That's a long distance, right? He would roll on the ground. He didn't walk. He would roll. That was his austerity. I forget his name. And but what is the purpose of all that? It's to go to Swarga, to heavenly planets, Indra Loka, for example, and dance with the Apsaris, these beautiful, gorgeous women who don't believe in marriage. When Arjuna went to Swarga to be with his father Indra, Indra invited him to dinner, and then after dinner they were watching the Apsaris dance, and the favorite Apsari noticed that Arjuna had these big arms like this, muscles, you know. Arjuna was 18 feet tall, by the way. And he was very handsome. He had a nice mustache and everything. So she became attracted to him. So she spoke to Indra and said, I want to be with him tonight. So then Indra went over to Arjuna and said, Arjuna, Urvasi wants to be with you tonight. He said, what? He said, Urvasi. He said, well, I don't want to be with her. He said, why not? He said, but she's one of your wives. She's like my mother. He said, no, you don't understand. The Apsaris are not like that. You know, they can be with anyone they want. He said, no, I don't want to. So she got really upset and cursed him that he would become a eunuch. And when she did that, you know, Indra was like really, shocked. And he begged her, okay, make it for a short period of time. So he said, okay, 1 year. That's why he had to be a eunuch for 1 year, right? And then on the other hand, he saved, while he was a eunuch, he was permitted to take care of Uttara, the daughter of the king, at that time in his kingdom, and as a eunuch, eunuchs were allowed to bathe young girls and dress them and take care, be in the company of young girls in the bathroom and things like that. So later on, when they found out that this is not an ordinary person, this is Arjuna, the king offered his daughter to Arjuna to marry. And Arjuna said, "What?" He said, I can't accept. He said, "Why not?" He said, "I'm her guru." He said, "I'm teaching her everything. Guru cannot accept disciple as wife." See, Arjuna was an exceptional person. He refused Urvasi and he refused Uttara. He said, but if she wants to get married, she can marry my son. Right. So here we see the morality of an exceptional morality of Arjuna. Right. He was not a low-class person. He was a very, very highly cultured person. Okay, so we have a choice at every moment in our life to either follow the principles of Sanatana Dharma, as explained in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, or not follow them, right? Or remain ignorant of them, or to study them and not really strictly follow them. We can do anything we want. We can't. There are many things we can't do because our free will is limited only to those two choices: either follow Krishna's instructions or not follow them. And Krishna knows what will happen to us both ways. But he doesn't force us to follow him. And we have to choose in this life. In order to choose, we're given these enhanced, highly developed senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, mind, intelligence, and ego. Okay, so then it says that the Lord, being full in himself, has no attraction for so-called heavenly happiness. He doesn't want to go dance with the Apsaris. He doesn't want to go to Swarga. He's not interested in any of that. But although he creates the material world, although all these things, all these people are expansions of himself, he's not interested in them. But he will maintain them in his form as Lord Vishnu. And maintenance is very difficult, as you know. Getting married, that's not so difficult. But maintaining a family is very difficult, right? And walking away from the family is even more difficult, right? When you in old age. But these things are required according to the Vedic system. There's brahmachari, there's grihastha, there's vanaprastha, and sannyas. These are 4 different steps of the varnashram, of the varna and ashrama system of social organization to help people go back to Godhead. So therefore it says, the heavenly demigods are only his engaged servants. The proprietor never desires the low-grade happiness such as the workers may desire. He is aloof from the material actions and reactions. For example, the rains are not responsible for different types of vegetation that appear on the earth, although without such rains, there's no possibility of vegetative growth. So you could say the cause of the vegetables are the seeds. But if there's no rain, the seeds will not sprout. Right? So Krishna is the unseen cause of everything. And therefore, people are confused by cause and effect in the material world. Therefore, they say, everything is relative. Nothing is relative. Relative to what? Well, they say, one thing is relative to something else that's relative to something else that's relative ad infinitum. No, that's not true. And they'll say there are no absolutes. There's only relativity. Right? That's not true. There is an absolute. That's Krishna. And everything is relative to Krishna. Right? Because they don't understand this, they become victims of their own ignorance and become subjected to the laws of material nature. Right? So, therefore, they're subjected to birth, old age, disease, and death, and to repeat it over and over and over again. until they can get properly educated. And that could take billions of years and many, many reincarnations. Infinite number of reincarnations. So it's a dangerous thing to be caught up in the material world. And it's all due to envy of God, and it turns into hatred of God, or misunderstanding God and thinking that he's simply an order supplier, just like you order something from Amazon and they deliver it to you, right? So God is not an order supplier. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, he maintains everyone, all living entities, the insects, the animals, the birds, the aquatics, the human beings, the mammals, everyone. But he's not an order supplier. He gives that job to the devas. But the devas, they're not giving something that they own. They receive it from God and then they disperse it. Or they receive from Krishna and then they disperse it to the people. So most people are ignorant of this whole chain of supply chain. They're completely ignorant of it, and or they want to use it like Amazon. Give me this, give me that. So they worship Matadi or Durga. They say Janam Dehi, Danam Dehi, and in other words, give me many children, give me wealth, give me knowledge, give me strength, give me this, give me that, give me, give me, give me, give me. We're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. They're chanting, gimme, 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 gimme. That's their mantra. Dehi, 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 dehi. So, God is not a supply agent, although he supplies everything, but we should rather give our love and attention and service to God. That is the purpose. That is the way to become liberated from the cycle of birth and death, to engage all our activities in the service of God. Therefore it says, in the material creations, the Lord is only the supreme cause. The Lord is only the supreme cause. The immediate cause is material nature, by which the cosmic manifestation is made visible. The created beings are of many varieties, such as the demigods, human beings, and lower animals, and all of them are subject to the reactions of their past good or bad activities, or karma. The Lord only gives them the proper facilities for such activities and the regulations of the modes of nature, but he is never responsible for their past and present activities. In the Vedanta Sutra 2.1.34, it is confirmed, Vaishamya Nagrinye na sapek sattvat. The Lord is never partial to any living entity. The living entity is responsible for his own acts. The Lord only gives him facilities through the agency of material nature, the external energy. In other words, through the demigods and the material nature. Anyone who is fully conversant with all the intricacies of this law of karma, or fruit of activities, does not become affected by the results of his activities. In other words, the person who understands the transcendental nature of the Lord is an experienced man in Krishna consciousness, and thus he is never subjected to the laws of karma. Wow. In other words, you become liberated from laws of karma if you understand their intricacies and how Krishna is transcendental to them. That's what this verse is saying. If you understand that Krishna is transcendental to everything in the material world, the laws of karma, etc., then you also can become transcendental to the laws of karma. How? Well, like for example, if you want to drive a car, you're trained first, you take a test, a written test, and then a practical test, then you're given a license. Now, as long as you follow the laws that you were taught in the written exam that you took and the study that you did to take that exam, you can drive anywhere you want on legal roads and never be stopped, right? But if you knowingly or unknowingly break those rules, like for example, let's say you come for the first time to the United States from India, you rent a Hertz car and you start driving on the left-hand side, right? The right-hand side, I'm sorry, like they do in India. So what happens? Well, if you don't have an accident, you'll get stopped by the police, right? And they'll say, I'm going to give you a ticket. You say, why is that? So you're driving on the wrong side of the street. You say, no, this is the right side of the street. No, not in America. But in India, it's the right side of the street. So I want to drive on this side of the street. He said, no, you're in America. And if you don't listen to what I say, I'll arrest you and put you in jail. So it doesn't matter that you drive on the right-hand side in India or the left-hand side, whatever. You have to follow the rules of this country where you drive on the other side of the street. So here we see ignorance is not an excuse, or you cannot impose your own rules. We have to follow Krishna's rules. Otherwise, we get in trouble. That's why there's so much suffering in the material world. People are not taught, neither by the Brahmins or the imams or the priests or the pastors. They're not taught. Either they're given partial information or incomplete information or wrong information. And because of that, just like, for example, the entire caste system in India as it's practiced in modern India is wrong. It's not based on birth. Nowhere does it say that it's based on birth. The caste system is explained in in the Bhagavad Gita. Chaturvarnyam mayasristam gunakarma vibhagasaha. Krishna says, in the beginning I established the 4 social orders based on guna and karma, quality and work. But the Brahmanas, who had the exclusivity on Sanskrit learning, changed one word. They said janma and karma, and created the false caste system that has caused havoc in Hinduism in modern times. So they changed only one word of the Shastra, and it's influenced so many people negatively. So therefore we see how not only there are, let's say, invaders of India and so forth that have caused problem. It's the Brahmanas that have caused the problem in India, more so than the invaders. Like, for example, the Mongols invaded Iraq or the Caliphate of the Muslims in the 8th and 9th century and defeated them. But in 1 or 2 generations, the Muslims were able to convert all the Mongols into Muslims. Right. Now, the Mongols and the Muslims invaded India, but instead of converting them, the Brahmins rejected them and also said anyone who works for them is no longer a Hindu. So you see, the Muslims were able to convert the Mongols, and the Hindus rejected them. And what happened? There were no Mongols or there were no Muslims in India before the invasion. And how did it happen that so many people became Muslims? Is because of the fanaticism of the Brahmanas, not because obviously the Muslims were somewhat fanatical also, but it was the fanaticism of the Brahmanas that was most, let's say, instrumental in people converting. And also, the Muslims charged the jizya tax. If you were a Hindu, you didn't have to. You had to pay a tax, and if you couldn't pay the tax, you were forced to convert to Islam. So the Hindus didn't help the poor Hindus. The wealthy Hindus didn't help the poor Hindus, or at least not in a massive way, and therefore so many of them had no choice but to convert to Islam. Okay, so here we see that the problem in life is ignoring the correct understanding of the Vedic knowledge and accepting false interpretations of it, and that leads to havoc. And that's what's happened in these times. So it says, in other words, the person who understands the transcendental nature of the Lord is an experienced man in Krishna consciousness, and thus he is never subjected to the laws of karma. One who does not know the transcendental nature of the Lord and who thinks that the activities of the Lord are aimed at fruitive results, as are the activities of the ordinary living entities, certainly becomes entangled himself in fruitive reactions. But one who knows the supreme truth is a liberated soul, fixed in Krishna consciousness. So, who is he referring to here? One who does not know the transcendental nature of the Lord and who thinks that the activities of the Lord are aimed at fruitive activities, as are the activities of the ordinary living entities, certainly becomes entangled himself in fruitive activities. So these are the people who believe that by performing Satyanarayana Puja, their business is going to do better, the health of their family member will get better, this thing, that thing. That is called fruitive activity, materially self-interested activities. It is not the purpose of Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is to liberate people from the cycle of birth and death, even in this lifetime. It's not when you die, even in this lifetime. But if one remains anchored to false interpretations of the goal of Sanatana Dharma, and they think that by doing certain pujas they will succeed materially, that is a false concept. And it keeps them in the cycle of birth and death. So we'll stop right there. This is all explained in 4th chapter, 14th verse, 4th chapter, 15th verse, 4th chapter, 16th verse, 17th verse, and 18th verse. It's a very important part of the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions? Yes? You have to come to the microphone, or give him a microphone. Okay, you can come here.
Hare Krishna. So Maharaj, on the one hand, we say that God, he punishes those who don't surrender to him, so those who don't follow the Lord. So if you surrender to God, then go back to Godhead, you become free from the material world.
Okay,
and if
see, when you say punishment, the whole point here was that the living entity, you and me, are responsible for the suffering, not God. He doesn't go out of his way to punish anyone. He gives us Bhagavad Gita. He spoke this 5,000 years ago, right? He spoke it before that also. But in most recent times, he spoke this 5,000 years ago, and we still have it, right? Especially this version as it is, Yata Rup, right? So no one can claim, I didn't know. The knowledge is there. It's just a question of making the effort to understand it. Now, let's say I'm not a member of the Sanatana Dharma, and I'm a Christian or I'm a Muslim. Well, they have rules and regulations also that you have to follow. If they don't follow them, like the Christian, actually in Christianity, you're not supposed to eat meat. But because the priests and the Pope and everyone are meat eaters, people think it's okay to eat meat. But actually, Jesus forbade eating meat. The Bible forbids eating meat, you see. So that's another discussion. But I'm saying, if there's suffering, if there's so-called punishment, it's because out of ignorance, we are trying to emulate God and trying to control part of God's creation, right? So therefore, the root of all sin is deliberate disobedience to the laws of nature by disregarding the proprietorship of the Lord. Okay, go ahead.
I think that's where I'm struggling a little bit. This so he creates this system wherein if one doesn't surrender to Krishna, or Krishna say don't surrender to God or don't surrender to Allah. I think it's the same concept everywhere. If one doesn't surrender to God, then there is suffering.
Well, let's say, when you were a little boy, right? Did you surrender to your parents?
Sometimes not.
Oh, but okay, let's say up until the age of 8 years old, did you surrender to your parents?
I don't remember. Maybe sometimes.
What?
Sometimes maybe not.
Really? Okay. Have you suffered in this lifetime?
Yes.
What do you attribute the suffering to?
Well, that's what I'm trying to. That's the question, right? Is it on the one hand, I say
Well,
you are
give us
responsible.
examples of suffering that you've experienced first.
I have sinus. I get condition in the sinus. Sometimes I get a asthmatic attack. I get headaches.
Any other type of suffering? In
Let's take that as an example.
relationships? Any relationship suffering?
Yes.
Competitiveness in business suffering?
Not really.
Huh?
Not really.
Not yet. Okay. Let's say, well, in relationship suffering. I mean, an angry neighbor or a person that was a friend and became your enemy or anything like that?
Misunderstandings.
Okay. So whose fault is that? Is that God's fault?
Well, that's the question, right? Is it? It's not. We don't say it's his fault, but he said the root of the suffering is because we're not following God. We're not, and I can see that if one surrenders to God, then there is no suffering. But what I don't understand is when you don't surrender to God, then you suffer. I mean, it seems to give God a sense of like a despot of some sort. That if you, it's not I am who's responsible for the suffering, but if you don't surrender unto me, then you'll suffer. It's like a,
No, that's not the point. You're causing your own suffering. Like, for example, if it says go 35 miles an hour on the, 228th Street, and you go 45, and a policeman stops you, whose fault is that?
no,
The policeman's fault?
no, that's fine. So we can say that God has created some rules by which one can live
Yeah,
happily.
called the laws of nature.
Yeah, the laws of nature.
Or it's synonymous with religious principles.
Yes. So we can say he created this world and he created some laws, and if you follow those laws, you can live happily. But the first law, as you said, is to surrender to Krishna.
The what?
The first law, as you said multiple times today, is to surrender to Krishna.
Yeah.
Which seems like the law that you're not following is not surrendering unto him. So if you don't surrender unto him,
No, wait a minute. You're doing it backwards.
okay.
Look at what happens if you surrender to him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's look at it like that. Like, for example, it's the same thing with the car. What happens if you follow all the rules? You tell me.
Yeah, so you can live happily within the framework.
There you
Yes.
go. So look at it that way. If you surrender to him, look what happens.
I see. So you mean surrendering to Krishna is following the laws of the material world, and then you can live happily in the material world?
Respecting the laws of nature, which are synonymous with the principles of spirituality. Like, for example, they have the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt do not covet your neighbor's wife. So they have laws, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you follow those laws, what happens? Yeah, you avoid most problems in life. And if you don't follow them, what happens? You get suffering. So don't think, well, God is this despot, a nasty guy, made this, if you don't surrender to him. No, wait a minute. What happens if you surrender to him? You get liberated from the cycle of birth and death, even in this life. It's not after you die. Even in this life, you don't get entangled in false identifications and all the different levels of them. You don't get entangled in all the pronouns and all the genders, for example.
But if one follows the laws, the idea is, can one enjoy independent of Krishna? Can one be happy independent of Krishna?
That's what everyone's trying to do because of their false ego. And all you have to do is just to read a history book and you'll see it's not possible.
Exactly. And
So therefore, again, look at the positive side. What happens if you follow the rules and regulations of spiritual life? You avoid all this trouble. Look what happened to Hitler. Look what happened to Alexander the Great. Look what happened to Napoleon. Look what's happening to Putin. Look what's happening to Franco, or what happened to Franco. Look what happened to Trump, and look what happened to this one and that one. The Shah of Iran. You go down the list.
no, I agree. That's the system. That if one pleases Krishna, or if one submits to him, follows his laws, then he is.
You avoid all that trouble.
You avoid all the trouble.
And you get liberated.
The question really is, if one wants to, like we said, Krishna has given you free will. You can choose to surrender to him, or you not choose to surrender to
Yes.
him.
No, Krishna's not
You want-
forcing you to surrender.
Yes. So
But he's telling you what happens if you do, and he's telling you what happens if you don't.
and I think that's the part, that if you don't surrender, then we can say that here are some laws.
But look, you're surrendering. Like, you work in a company,
Mm-hmm.
no, you've surrendered to the company.
For part of the day.
Huh?
For part of the day, yes.
Okay. Okay. Are you married?
No.
Okay. Well, when you get married, you'll be surrendered to your wife also,
Sure. No.
and your kids. So you,
The fundamental principle is accepting that everything that we are operating in, the system itself is owned by the law. That's the fundamental thing. It's
well,
the-
Amazon belongs to Jeff Bezos. You know, if you join Amazon, you have to
Yeah, so I think
submit to
that's where,
Jeff Bezos.
that's the fundamental thing. Like you're trying to still say like, okay, I'm independent completely, but no, you're part of the system that is created by the law. That acceptance
Agreed.
of
Agreed.
authority is what is missing. As a result, we try to be independent.
And that's because of modern education. Modern education tells us there's no God. That's just a palliative to make you feel good. But there's only really science and rationality and technology. That's the reality. No, that's not true.
Right. And I'm not questioning the authority of God. I'm not even questioning the correctness of the idea that if you surrender to Krishna, then you're happy, and if you don't surrender, then you're suffering and caught within the material world. I understand all of that. What I'm trying to understand is, why does, when Krishna gives you the free will to not
Follow.
choose to surrender to him, but to try to enjoy independently, why is it that, how is that really a freedom when if you do that, then you suffer?
No, like one of these days, let's say you get married, you have a son or a daughter.
Mhm.
Are you going to tell him, don't do this? It's better to do that. Are you going to say that, or you're not going to say anything?
Sure, but if I say that if you
wait a
stay
minute.
in this house,
Just
then
answer
you're
the question. Are you going to set some rules for your kids?
I'm not going to set rules for them, but I'm going to communicate the rules that I understand exist for the way to operate in this
Why
world.
would you do that? Why do you want to communicate those rules?
Because it's going to be beneficial for them.
Ah, that's the point. Okay.
Mhm.
So you're not going to say "mum," not going to say anything. When your daughter, sticks her finger into the electric plug and gets electrocuted somewhat, you don't say, "Look, don't do that again," and then she does it again, and you say, "Well, okay, what can you do?"
Right, but if I say them that as long as you stay with me, you'll be happy and satisfied. But if you choose to go outside, if you choose to leave me, you have the freedom to leave me. But if you leave me, I'll make sure that you won't be happy.
You'll make sure.
If that's what I say, then it's not a loving relationship, right? Then it's a constraint. It's not giving
But
them
wait a
freedom.
minute. If she chose to leave you, if your daughter chose to leave you, whose fault is that? Is it your fault?
I think that's not a fault. That's a choice. That's an independence that
No,
she
but
has.
maybe you were abusive. So she would say, "Well, I left my father because he was abusive."
Yeah, or she doesn't love me. She finds her shelter somewhere else. Whatever that is.
Yeah.
But the idea is giving her freedom or loving her means, and I'm giving her the freedom to either stay with me or not stay with me.
That's what Krishna's doing.
Well, the
He's
difference
giving
is
you
that
the
if I
freedom
say,
to stay with him or to leave him.
well, but it's not really a freedom if I tell her that if you leave me, then you're going to suffer because I'm the controller. I can, wherever you go,
No,
I'll make
you're
sure.
not the controller. You're
But in the example-
you're a very subordinate controller. Now, in the case of Krishna, it's factual that if you ignore him, you will, out of ignorance, commit sinful activities by not accepting his proprietorship over everything. So you'll start taking things that don't belong to you, and then using them in a wrong way, and that'll just get you more and more implicated in the laws of nature, in the laws of karma. So the whole, what you are saying is, I don't accept that someone can have such power as God.
No, that's not the point. The
It
point
is the point. It is the point.
No, I understand he has the
No,
power.
but let's look at it like this. Let's say you are you're like 5 feet 10, 5 feet 11,
yeah.
right? Let's say there's a guy that's 7 feet 8, right? And he towers over you all the time, and he controls you. And he says, if you try and leave me, I'll beat you to death. And you're frightened, right? So, but your desire is freedom from that controller. So you devise some way to get free of that person. Let's say when he's sleeping, you run away, right? And then he looks for you, he can't find you, right? So in that type of situation, you are doing the right thing, trying to be free. Because that person is not a complete controller. He's a temporary controller. In the case of God, he's a complete controller. But because he's a complete controller, whether you choose to be with him or choose not to be with him, he's still maintaining you.
Okay.
You're right?
Yeah.
The sun comes up. That's controlled by God. He could stop it from coming up if he wanted to, right? Your digestion is working. Your senses are all intact. They're all working. And you don't know how it's happening, but it's being controlled by other living entities, the demigods, who are working under God, right? So either way, you want to leave him or you want to stay with him. You can't do it without his help. He's an absolute controller. So he's giving you the ability to leave him. And at the same time, he's also trying to educate you that this is what happens if you stay with me, and this is what happens if you don't stay with me. It's up to you to choose. It's different than that, 7'8" brutal despot, that trying to control you. Krishna is not only controlling you, but he's giving you limited free will, but he's maintaining you in both ways, whether you stay with him or you don't stay with him.
How is this different from Christian or Muslim idea, where it's the main driving force is fear of God? That if you if you surrender to God, then you can liberate it.
Okay,
If you
that's a
don't,
very
then fear.
good question. When you come to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna, he is not forcing you to surrender. All he's trying to do is say, please chant Hare Krishna. And if you chant Hare Krishna, you'll be very happy. And please take prasadam. And please dance. And please come to the temple, have darshan. And please, if you want, listen to the Bhagavad Gita. He's not forcing you to do anything. All right? Because if there's force, there's no love. Right? So we are following Lord Chaitanya, who's an incarnation of Krishna, and who came in Kali Yuga not to punish people in any way, but to help them develop love for Krishna. Okay, so when you see the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, then your heart melts.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what we are doing.
Yeah.
We're not asking you surrender and become a slave. We're saying, come, take prasadam, dance, chant. If you like, you can hear the classes, and then you decide what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So you surrender because you're attracted and you're inspired, not
Yes.
because you're afraid of
No.
what's going to happen.
No.
otherwise.
No. Okay? So the more you learn about Lord Chaitanya, the more you will be satisfied that it's a voluntary process, and we're not saying, if you don't do this, you go to hell, you blah, 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 blah. But that possibility is there also, right? It's a fact of life. But if you meditate on the mercy and kindness and generosity of Lord Chaitanya, then you're not seduced by force. You're seduced by attraction.
Mhm.
And we want to be attracted to a beautiful person and to a beautiful way of life. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So those are good questions.
Yeah, it's very good summary of where you said, in case of God, even whether you are with him or not, he's still maintaining.
Yeah.
Everything is provided by him.
Yes.
You're just ignoring him. And his
You can
presence-
ignore him. You can ignore him your whole life. He's still maintaining it. Life after life, by the way. And by the way, God is the closest person to you. He's right in your heart. He's in my heart also. He's in the heart of every living entity as Paramatma. There's no one closer to him, to you, than him. But we don't realize that. Okay, who's going to chant? No.
Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Mandamoi Savadana Made
Mando Muri Sabadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhava Doriya Jai
Janara Prasade
Krishna Prapti Ho Jahan Ho Se Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya Gya
Guru Mukha Padma Vaikya Chitte Te Koriya Gya
Arana Kori Ho Mane Aja
Arana Koriya Manea Sa
Sri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
ऐसे उत्तम गति
जय प्रसाद पूरे सर्वाशा
ये प्रसाद पूरे सर्वाशा
जय प्रसाद पूरे सर्वाशा
ये प्रसाद पूरे सर्वाशा
चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिल जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
तो चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिल जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
प्रकाशित
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
वेदे गाय जहाँ राचारितो
गाय जनर चरित
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनरा बंधु
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधन जनर बंधु
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनरा बंधु
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधन जनर बंधु
लोकनाथ लोके राजीवाना
लोकनाथ लोके राजीवाना
लोकेनाथ लोके राजीवाना
लोकनाथ लोके राजीवाना
प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया
हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया
प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया
हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया
ये बेजास गुसुक त्रिभुवाना प्रभु बात पतिता पावाना
प्रभु बात पतिता पावाना
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण प्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने
नमस्ते सरस्वती
देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo.
Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravaja Gachasta Saraswati Shri Shimada's Divine Grace. A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Pram Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kunda Radha Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Putili Srimati Bhakti Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauranga. Visesa Sunyavadi Paskat Yedizatarine. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance at the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. It was an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing, playing music. I'm sorry, I went off. The lotus feet of spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is our Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Putili Srimati Bhakti Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaura Premanandi Hari